The far left authoritarianism is on the rise again in Canada. Is that because it's spring? Is that because the Liberal Party is looking for an excuse to impose the Emergencies Act? Is it perhaps that the Liberal Party is completely and utterly in lockstep with the authoritarianism? Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. Canada has come to life with all of these Hamas protests all up and down the country. Hamas supporters protesting in Montreal, Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, and all these other cities on the Passover week for Easter for Christians. Of course, their target is the Jewish aspect, but let's remember that Jesus was born Jewish. So when you go after the Jews, you go after the Christians as well. Now, this is funny coming on the tail end of Mark Carney announcing that he wants to reimpose Bill C-69, the Internet Censorship Act, which will, of course, target everybody that doesn't agree with the Liberal Party under the guise of doing it for the children. It all seems to be a little bit suspect to me, and I'll show you a couple of examples of why that is. But let's start with something from the pleb, because I didn't want to go and get the whole thing myself, and the pleb captured the sentiment of what we're actually thinking, what the Liberal Party is actually thinking about doing. So you can see the pleb, he says Mark Carney is going to ban X in Canada if he wins. The Liberals are pure evil.
Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children. My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong.
It's funny that we're about 2 weeks away from the election and the Liberal Party really hasn't announced their platform. I mean, they've announced what they've stolen from the Conservatives in an effort to try to remove any of the teeth that the Conservatives have. But they don't have any mention of how is he going to make the neighborhood strong. Apparently he's going to make the neighborhood strong by censoring the internet. He's going to stop all of those home invasions, all of those carjackings in Toronto, all of those people kicking in your front door so they can steal your van or taking your car right out of your garage by making you silent on the internet. Of course, we know that that's not the case. He's just a censor. They just want to close you down on the internet because they can't withstand any of the criticism. They don't feel that they can withstand it, so they don't want to hear it. They don't have the strength of character. They don't have the strength of personality. They just want to say, how dare you talk to me that way? I mean, I find it funny that he went for all of these minority groups. He didn't mention the hate that gets directed towards men on all kinds of platforms, including the CBC. I noticed that he didn't mention the hate that gets directed towards Caucasians on the CBC and many other platforms. And I definitely noticed that he didn't mention the hate that gets directed towards Christians on the CBC, for example. That's not an American platform. That's a Canadian platform. And it is rife with all of those things that I just discussed, but I don't hear them mentioning that. I don't hear them policing themselves. I don't hear them making themselves accountable to the same rules that they want to hold you accountable to. What I hear them saying is a bunch of buzzwords in an effort to sway your vote, and then they will do nothing. They will not stop the violent. No, that's not going to happen. They're not going to stop the robberies and the revolving door on prisons, and they're not going to stop putting people in house arrest. One of the liberal runners in Canada thinks that putting criminals on house arrest just saves the taxpayer money. Isn't that a genius idea? I mean, that's just about the laziest form of policing I've ever heard in my life. Of course, Mark Carney is going to solve all of that by telling you that you're not allowed to have X in Canada. That seems to be a real kind of a trade-off in my mind. You see, and what they hate about X is not so much that all of those things, like those things don't exist, right? What they hate is that they can go on there and they can't force Elon Musk to censor you like they can do with Facebook, like they can do with Instagram, like they can do with all of the other platforms, the ones that they're in deep with. We know Mark Carney probably owns a piece of the Chinese platforms that are in Canada. He probably has stock in them. So, I mean, those are not going to be touched. All of the hate and all of the misandry and all of the, anti-Christian talk on there, the Christian phobia, that's not going to be touched at all. That's not going to be addressed. Attacking on masculinity, forget about it. That's not going to be looked after. I believe that Canada should change the Constitution like they did in the United States to include a freedom of speech amendment so that the Canadian government can never take it away, no matter how many laws they pass, no matter how quickly they invoke Article 1 of the Bill of Rights and Freedoms, which of course will destroy our freedom of expression. That's my position. I don't believe in censorship in any way, shape, or form, because censorship is how they control you. That is why the freedom of speech is in the American Constitution. So people couldn't tell you that you're not allowed to come up with a good idea. People couldn't tell you you're not allowed to criticize, which is, of course, where censorship ends up. That's why so much of the world, people live in fear of their governments. Speaking of a corrupt government, we can see that the Liberal Party is now taking to desperate measures where they're trying to plant American style and American comments and American slogans at conservative rallies. I suppose their goal was to have one of their hand-selected reporters stand around and take a picture of it, just like they did during the trucker convoy, when Justin Trudeau's personal photographer just happened to be there when a flag from 1930s Germany was unveiled at the trucker convoy. The only one in the whole thing, and he just happened to be there. That's not a coincidence at all. Now, the CBC reports that they are aware of the two staffers that planted these buttons. Two Liberal staffers attended last week's Canada Strong Network conference where they planted buttons that used Trump-style language and highlighted division within the Conservative Party. I'll go on, and then it comes down here. It says the buttons were scattered at the event space in a way to give the impression that they were made and left by people attending the conference. So you were coming out, you were taking it off, right? Because that's the kind of short-sightedness that the far left has. In fact, the article goes on, the idea came from the liberal war room because the liberals are obsessed with the United States. The far left is obsessed with the United States. That's why 70% of the people that are voting for the Liberal Party are voting against Donald Trump, not voting for what's best for Canada, because they're just obsessed. They sit there and just consume all of this far left rhetoric coming out of the media that targets Donald Trump, because there is nobody like that to target in Canada. Because the individuals inside of Canada that would need to be targeted for being totalitarian, for being authoritarian, for being misleading the government, and for doing what's wrong with the country would be their own people, right? That would be the Liberal Party, and they just couldn't have that. So they throw out this red herring, and they hope that somebody will chase it, that somebody will follow after it, and that's why they put these pins up. There's two slogans where it says what? They write the name, they scratch the name out of Jenny Byron, who apparently is leading the national campaign, and they write in Corey Teneke, that guy who stabs the Conservatives in the back and keeps Doug Ford from endorsing the Conservatives, while they all run and hide behind the Liberal banners in Ottawa and do nothing to solve the problems with the trade barrier, the trade concerns with the United States of America, unlike many other premiers who are proactively going into the United States, like Scott Moe, like Danielle Smith. And then, of course, the other one is Stop the Steal, which is a slogan apparently that come out of the election that the far right feels that was taken from them. It's all election interference, however. What they're trying to do is trying to sway people's votes through dishonesty. That is quite literally the Liberals' own definition of election interference. And these individuals need to be arrested. Will they be arrested? Probably not, because we know that by replacing all of the people in the appropriate police forces with their own hand-selected people over the last 10 years, that nobody will enforce the law when it's on the one side of the aisle. The left side of the aisle gets a free pass on everything. They don't get any police scrutiny. They don't get any police discipline. They don't get any policing whatsoever. They get, in fact, supported by the police. They get protected by the police. They get hidden by the police. For example, where are the 11 names? How can we be running an election without knowing the 11 people that were compromised by foreign governments? That I find to be a bit strange, that the RCMP has not done something about that. We talk about, I hear the left, the Liberals talking about security clearance, and yet I don't hear them talking about any of the security being cleared in the House of Commons. How do we know who we're voting for if we don't know who those names are? Doesn't stop there with the planting. Apparently, the Liberal government has stooped so low as to send documents to people that are in prison telling them that they're better off to vote for the Liberal Party than they are to vote for the Conservative Party, because the Liberal Party will let them out of jail for their crimes much faster, and that the Conservative Party is going to be harder on people who commit crimes. This seems to be the only crime policy that the Liberal Party is putting. I picked this up from MP Brock. This document was found in a prison by a correctional officer aimed at turning inmates against conservatives. Are the Liberals really trying to win votes from convicted criminals by attacking conservative crime policies? This after a decade of Liberal soft on crime laws coddle criminals and unleash chaos in our communities. And then I'll just click on the document. So they have Canada wants to impose a 3-strike law. It says here that serious offenses will be given offenders a minimum of 10 years, no bail, no regular parole, no stat parole, and inmates must pass all of the urinalysis test in order to be released after 10 years. Offenders will also get an automatic dangerous offender tag. Life sentences on serious offenses. If criminals are caught selling vast amounts of drugs, selling guns, or human trafficking, a life sentence will automatically be imposed. Less resources and funding for all federal prisons. Inmates in maximum security must wear orange jumpsuits. TVs must be displaced, and funding must be lowered. The services available through this online portal, how to access them, and why you may want to register. I won't dive too deeply into my position on the criminal codes and the changes and the alterations and the philosophy that Canadians should probably adopt. I will say that if you commit the same crime 3 times, you probably deserve a stiffer sentence. I will say that life sentences in Canada are not handed out the same way they are in the United States. Having said all of that, let's leave that aside. Let's just look at what this indicates. This indicates that the Liberal Party is willing to cater to the criminal in order to have power. So now we got them forging pins and lying flat out about who's doing what in the conservative rally. We got them going into federal prisons, asking them to visit their website so that they can tell them how to vote for Liberal and against the conservatives. And then you say to Pierre Poilievre somehow shouldn't be saying that you're soft on crime? You're literally catering, courting people who are serving time for crimes against the society in which they live. Doesn't matter to you. Drunk driver, here, vote for the Liberals. Domestic abuse, vote for the Liberals. Or intimate partner violence, vote Liberal. Robbed a bank, vote Liberal. Carjack, vote Liberal. I mean, these are the individuals that they want voting for them, right? They want them to vote for them. Let's remember that. They sent this document into these prisons so that they could convince those individuals to vote Liberal. You can leave all the rest of it aside. What does that say about the individual who's running for the Liberal Party? What does that speak to their mindset? What will they do if you get in their way? What will they do when they say, oh, no, we don't need the vote from the senior citizen anymore, so I don't care about slashing their funding? What will they say when they say we don't need your vote anymore? What's the ethics of an individual that is actively targeting people who are on punishment for their antisocial behavior? Because that's what breaking the law is. It's antisocial behavior. The society sets up a body of laws, and when you go against that, it's quite literally the basic and epitome of the definition of antisocial behavior. And the Liberals want them to join the Liberal Party. Now, you're out there telling yourself that you're going to vote against Donald Trump. Holy moly. That's what you're willing to put other Canadians through? That's what you're willing to put your children through, your grandparents through, your wives through, your daughters through. You're quite willing, to allow individuals to have softer sentences because you think it will harm Donald Trump. You can't be serious. Is that honestly the way that you feel that your Liberal government should be going? That they should be being deceitful with pins at rallies? That they should be allowing, courting, begging people who have broken the law to vote for them so that they can have the authority and the power to allow those very same people to not serve harsher sentences for committing the crimes against you, your mothers, your children, everyone you know, against the very peace and order that you are hoping you can count on when you get up out of bed every day. When you send your children off to school, that order and that structure, that that defines the word society. What are we talking about here? How far have they slipped? How far have they gone? How desperate are they becoming? And what will they do when that next level of desperation turns them against you? Will they say, oh, no, we've gone far enough? Will they say, oh, no, we need to keep the brakes, pump the brakes? Or will they say, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway because whatever I got to do to have my little scrap of power is what I'm willing to do? Where does that end? How far does that go? And are you willing to stand by idly and watch it happen? So that what? You can say something to Donald Trump? He's going to be in the Americas, first of all, not even paying any attention to you. And secondly, he's going to be telling himself that he likes law and order and all the people around him also like it. Because law and order is what makes a society function. Law and order is what allows the individuals of this world to have the freedoms that to express themselves, to dress the way they want, to take the bus whenever they want, to drive the car the direction that they want. All of the things I would point out, many of these things are under attack by the eco-zealots of the Liberal Party, the same party that is courting, actively pursuing the vote of the criminals of Canada. You can't make this up. You let me know what you think. Do you think that this is a reasonable position from the Liberal Party? Am I being unreasonable? I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.